Welcome to Streaming with Two Dudes, a podcast about all things streaming. Each episode, we break down some of the best series, songs, movies, and shows. I'm one dude, Parker.
I'm the other dude, Jeff.
And dudes, this episode, we're talking about Halloween Ends, a 2002 film. But first, Jeff, what else have you been streaming?
All right, so maybe everybody's heard of something new that was released in the music industry. I think she goes by the name Taylor Swift,
Oh, yeah, T Swift.
maybe Tay Tay to some.
Tay Tay, yeah.
Uh, I consider myself one of the odd, rare, middle age Swifties.
Mm-hmm.
So of course I was psyched. Her new album released about a week, 2 weeks ago, week and a half. So of course, I didn't stay up to midnight, when it dropped because I might be a Swifty, but I also have a full-time job and I have to get up early. So but I did check it out during normal business hours.
Now, that's not what your text messages say. And because you were texting me about 12:07 and we're just like, oh my gosh, this thing is, and then the fire emojis just filled up the rest of my screen.
Parker,
So,
you should not lie on a podcast. That is that is although that's very believable coming from me, but now her previous album, I think I was up at midnight, but I didn't have to get up early the next day. I do have limitations as I get older. I cannot operate well off a little sleep anymore. But so yeah, I've been now. See, I don't know if you're anything like me. Maybe it's because I'm not a musician outside of sixth grade year when I totally rocked the clarinet, and but unfortunately gave it up after 1 year because I didn't like getting teased for carrying my little clarinet case.
I was a trumpet player in sixth grade.
Okay, but no, I've always loved music. I can kind of fiddle with the keyboard some, just because of a lot of stuff I memorized, but so I don't know if it's because I'm not a natural musician, so I don't necessarily pick up on a lot of things that maybe like someone like you or someone that's got a better
Oh, I'm not a
understanding.
musician.
No, but probably more so than I am. So it's like I never like a song or an album when I first listen to it. Never. I mean,
Hmm.
it's very rare that I hear a song and like right off the bat, like, wow, that's gonna be one of my favorites for sure. I don't know if just because it's new and I don't understand the meaning of the songs. I need to go back and look at the lyrics, so I haven't really connected with it yet.
Yeah.
Um, so the first listen through, I'm like, but as I've listened to it more, it's definitely got she definitely did good, as we always expect from Taylor, and you kind of have to grow along with her because obviously people still kind of look at her as the Taylor that started when she was like 15 years old, and
Yeah.
but she's 32 now, so obviously she's matured. Her music has matured. Her style has matured. I mean, there's a part of me that still kind of misses like the 1989 vibe,
Yeah.
just the fun, poppy, cheery type stuff. So of course, this album is definitely not that. It's more just a very honest, vulnerable just state to where she's just brutally honest about stuff she's going through or her insecurities. So it's really deep, more on the dark side. But yeah, I mean, anybody that likes Taylor is going to love this album, and I would imagine even people that have never give Taylor a chance would listen to this as their first time giving her a chance and would love the album as well. But
Yeah. I
yeah.
love when artists grow and actually like mature with their music and do a good job of it. I mean, Taylor Swift is like obviously a recent example of it, and like Justin Bieber's, kind of is an example of that. And I mean, even Hanson. I don't know if you remember Hanson
Oh
from
yeah.
Mbop,
Oh
but
yeah.
they even then, like we made fun of them, but they wrote their own music, and which was kind of crazy for three teenagers that play their own music, but play their own instruments and everything. They wrote their own music and their own lyrics, and then they still actually put music out to this day. And they have like, like I think the youngest one's my age, and I'm 35, so I forget. So I guess the other older ones are, you know, however old. I don't know. I don't follow them that well, but I do hear their music every once in a while. It pops up on my Spotify playlist,
Hmm.
and so they they're still rocking out, dude. They're doing pretty good. I'll give like Hanson mad respect for sure. um
So I don't know if you I've seen a TikTok trend, not necessarily recently, but over the last year, where people like the day I actually listened to the lyrics of Bop,
Yeah,
and you actually, because when you're young, it was just like a very catchy tune, but then
right.
you act like you said, they at a young age wrote most of their own songs, and you actually listen to the lyrics, and you're like, wow, that's a pretty deep and life altering type lyrics in there. That and actually one of my favorite songs, I had to send it to you if you hadn't heard it, but it's like a slower, stripped down version of Mbop.
Really?
Love it. It's like, which I've
Yeah.
always loved Mbop, just the original.
See,
But
I was a, I mean, I'm still like this if I can't understand lyrics, but when I was a kid, when I would buy CDs, the first thing I would do would open the book and see if they had the lyrics printed, and I would follow their lyrics on
oh
every
yeah.
song from every song that was on the album. I would just follow their lyrics the whole time and just see like what it's about. And so I could be like, oh, do I relate to this one? And that's how I would always find my favorite songs on every album. And I mean, there's probably songs that I would probably relate to more this day that I just never have actually gone back and listened to because as a kid, I would just find my favorite songs like through the first playthrough and then those were it. And
Oh yeah.
so like yeah, as far as like Hanson goes, that was one of them. Because I mean, I had their first CD. I'm not gonna try to act all cool and say like I was like hating on Hanson when they came out. I was definitely a Hanson fan back then, and I bought their first CD, and that was one of them. And I was like, oh, these lyrics are kind of cool. So yeah, dude, I always felt cool being, like, one of the few people that was singing the actual words to MMMBop, which, was probably not as cool as I thought I was at the time, but, here we are that made me into the man the man that I am today.
No shame in that. No. Well, speaking of the man you are today, what has the man been streaming lately?
Alright, so I actually, am gonna bring up something that isn't so creepy. I guess it could be creepy if you're looking at it from how people can be played. But I'm watching a show, or I watched a show called The Mole. They Netflix picked this show up. I think it used to be on NBC or CBS or something like that for a couple of seasons. It got canceled, but Netflix, being the streaming service that they are, rebooted something, and it's just so much fun. Each episode, they're trying to, figure out who is the mole, and the mole is with this group of people, and the mole is trying to prevent them bringing home as much money as possible and sabotage like every mission and all of these things. And it at the end of the episode, the way people get eliminated, they don't get voted off. They answer questions about who they think the mole is, and the person who gets the most questions wrong gets sent home. So it's never it's never like an elimination type situation like most reality shows. It's all based on the information that you're gathering from the people that you're playing with, and it's super interesting. I love those kind of shows. I think, I mean, I didn't watch it. I think they're releasing like 1 episode a week, which I didn't start watching it until I saw it pop up where it said the final episode. So Netflix did a really bad job of, showing me that because I feel like that's something that I would have gotten sucked into at the beginning. But they popped up with the final episode, I think, the day that it released, and I started watching it, and I binged it in, like, 2 or 3 days, and it just sucked me in. I was totally hooked. So I'm not gonna spoil about anything on if I found out who the mole was, if I thought about it or not. If you watch the show and you wanna reach out to me, feel free. We can talk about the mole, but, yeah, I was totally into it. I hope they make another season. I'm gonna be one of those people that watches it every week, and heck, I might even do my own spin-off podcast for that show if I can't get Jeff to watch it with me, because that's one that we can watch every week, and you'll be forced to watch with us every week. So, I mean, maybe, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I might be down
Um
for that. I remember the show when it was on. I don't think I ever watched it, but I remember thinking that sounds like a pretty fun concept.
Yeah, because I always hate those shows where you have to, like, manipulate people to get get them to vote other people off. I always found that so malicious and, like, evil, but there's something about this kind of manipulation where it's like, if you can get somebody to just, like, play themselves, it's kind of a fun situation because, like, we have people that are like, "I'm gonna purposely sabotage the mission so that people think that I'm the mole," and us as the viewers, we don't know who the mole is until everybody else does. So it's not like one of those things where, you're in on it the whole season. So, like, it also makes it interesting to where you're trying to figure it out with everybody else, and everybody's kind of playing up to the camera, like, like, "Am I the mole? I don't know." And so it's just kind of so interesting because everybody's just kind of like, "Am I?" Teasing with everybody else, but they're also, like, denying it at the same time, like, "No, I would never do that," like, "You're crazy." So it's super fun. It's the kind of reality show that I actually enjoy.
Nice.
Yes, sir. It was super fun.
Yeah,
You did
so
a little bit more research on this, so I'm gonna kind of let you take it right here because I know that you did some research and some tidbits and things. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about what you know, because I mean, I'm sure your history with Halloween is way more intensive than mine.
oh, yeah, I mean, like, me and Jamie Lee Curtis, we go way back.
Yeah.
We went to different schools at different times together,
Oh yeah.
and so she just gave me a lot of cool insight. But, actually, it's only fitting that we end the month of Screaming with Two Dudes around Halloween, actually covering, one of the movies that I think really helped launch just the popularity of horror flicks in general.
Definitely
Uh,
slashers 100%. Like there
oh,
was
yeah. So, obviously, you can also mention, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre kind of played a
mhm.
role. But yeah, the original 1978 Halloween film just, of course, goes down as a classic. It was great. And so, for those that are familiar with it, or maybe even some listeners that aren't, they kind of relaunched a new trilogy in 2018. The first one just being called Halloween, and then you had Halloween Kills, and then Halloween Ends. But what they did is, starting with the one in 2018, just called Halloween, it completely disregards all previous sequels. So it is picking, it recognizes the original Halloween,
Mhm.
and that's it.
Right.
So everything, and then I think the Halloween in 2018, which was the 11th installment in the franchise. So of course, the one we're covering, Halloween Ends, would have been the 13th installment. So what are your feelings? This has been done before. Halloween's obviously not the first. When they'll make a new one, but then they disregard like either all previous sequels or several of them, or
I mean,
what's your feelings on that?
I feel like it's only done in, like, horror films, right? Like, it's only
Yeah,
done in
more or
horror
less.
films. I don't think it's ever been done in anything else outside of horror films except for maybe, like, animated films where, like, continuity doesn't matter to a five-year-old.
Yeah.
Uh, Continuity does not matter to a five-year-old and horror fans, apparently,
Yeah.
because that's the only time that ever happens. But, I mean, sometimes if it's done right, I enjoy it, especially in the case of, something like this where John Carpenter really wasn't involved. I don't think he wrote them. I think he might have produced them, but I don't think he had as much hand in the rest of them after 3, right?
Yeah, you're probably right on that.
Yeah,
Um,
so I think it was just kind of one of those things where it's like once he has a little bit more, I guess I guess they just didn't feel like they were taken seriously, and, I mean, I've seen them, and the only one I can even remember is the first one, and the only one I ever felt like worth rewatching was the first one that
yeah.
as far as I go, and I mean, I've watched probably Halloween H2O the most, but that's just because that one
Eh,
came out whenever I was, like, 13.
well,
So,
plus that was the first one, if I'm not mistaken, where they brought back Jamie Lee Curtis.
yeah.
So of course with this new trilogy, she's the main actor, and character.
Mhm.
So yeah, like you said, you see this happen in a lot of horror franchises, and that genre has always proven to be highly profitable.
Right.
Um, and like most franchises, a lot of the sequels just aren't that good. So to me, it's usually a smart move. Like you said, if done right, to kind of like relaunch it and like forget the previous sequels because I think it excites the fan base to kind of like go back to their roots and the fan base, especially like with this one, they're going back to the original story. Everybody probably agrees with us. The original was great. After that, not so much. Although I thought Halloween 2 was pretty good. So yeah, I think it was a smart move. I think it worked with what they were trying to accomplish. And I don't know about you, I was a little late watching the 2018 Halloween.
Yeah, I
Um,
was. I was.
maybe it was either last year, I think. I did not realize how well it did. It grossed over $200 million. And get this, it's the highest grossing slasher film in unadjusting dollars, breaking a record held by any guesses?
Scream.
Scream. Yeah, so which we've talked about a number of times. We love that one. So I didn't realize. I mean, I remember there being a lot of buzz around it. Like you said, they're relaunching it with a new trilogy. So I remember being excited about when I heard it, but it took me a while to still get around to watching it. So, and I was also kind of more intrigued because I knew it was being filmed in places not too far from me. So between the three movies, it was either filmed in Charleston, South Carolina, or Wilmington, North Carolina, or even the Georgia area. So I always get a little bit more interested when I know it's being filmed nearby, because a lot of times when we travel, we like to explore areas that we know we have shows or movies that were filmed there. Now, and we'll get into this more, but it was an interesting fact that I would have never guessed. But one of the major critiques about this last one, when Halloween ends, is that Michael Myers isn't featured enough and his not scream, his screen time was very low and limited.
Mhm.
So his screen time in Halloween Ends was 10 minutes and 55 seconds. However, his screen time in the original 1978 film was 9 minutes and 37 seconds.
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that, which has been a while since I've watched the original, but because I went in thinking kind of the same thing. It's like, wow, he wasn't really featured a whole lot in Halloween Ends as far as what you would have expected, but he actually had a little bit more time on this one than he did in the original.
I
So
wonder if they counted the time that he was a child,
I have no
and I
idea.
wonder if they also count the times that you're seeing through his eyes as well,
Yeah,
because they're saying screen time, you know? So, I feel like in the original, he might not have been on screen that much, but I feel like there was also a lot that took place, like, what we're seeing when because we see a lot of, like, Steadicam with, behind
yeah.
his eyes or whatever, quote, unquote, so, I don't know.
One last little tidbit, and I'll bring up some other maybe little interesting tips as we like to talk about it more in the recap. But I didn't notice this when I watched it, but so it just came up when I was kind of reading up on it. The opening credits used a blue font instead of an orange one. There was only one other Halloween that did that. Any guess?
Is it Halloween 3?
It is the season of the
Really?
witch,
Oh, nice.
a very controversial one, but so there's a theory that because we'll talk about it more. Halloween Ends was a little different. It wasn't. It was didn't follow the normal formula that maybe we've seen even in the more recent two Halloween and Halloween Kills. So maybe it was
Mhm.
kind of his paying homage to Halloween 3 that was drastically different.
Yeah.
So that was a neat little tidbit, and I'll kind of bring up some other little Easter eggs, maybe if you want to call them that, in other parts of the movie.
Alright, well, do you wanna go ahead and get on into it?
Let's do it.
Alright. We're gonna start out on Halloween night 2019. We got some 2 bourgeois parents. They're about to get ready and go out, but first they're waiting on the babysitter, 21-year-old Corey Cunningham. He's babysitting a young man named Jeremy who is a righteous little turd and gives Corey, a lot of crap as they're watching, like, horror movies and calls him the worst babysitter ever. This kid's terrified of Michael Myers, kind of like, even though he's terrified of Michael Myers, he's, you know, basically saying, like, Michael Myers doesn't kill kids, he kills the babysitters,
Yeah.
and just really antagonizing, uh,
Which
our dude Corey.
Was it just me, or did like? I'm like, "This guy's supposed to be 21?"
Right.
It's like he looks like 40. You couldn't have made him look any younger.
I
Uh,
know.
so then I was like, "Could they not have got a younger actor?" And the actor's actually only 25.
Yeah, he
So he was probably 23 when they filmed the movie, but I mean, he looks a lot younger later on in the movie, I guess with different hairstyle or just a different look.
I mean, he might have
Uh,
even been closer to 21 because I think this film I mean, I know he was probably not exactly 21, but this film was supposed to be even released last year around this time at, like they just didn't because of COVID. They
yeah.
were afraid it wouldn't have gotten enough theater, money from the theater and stuff, so that's one reason that I mean, he could have been even even closer to his age that he was
Yeah,
supposed
that
to be.
it's just weird how what they made him look like, 'cause I
Mhm.
figured which you know how it works. They're constantly using 35-year-olds to play a 21-year-old, so I kinda thought that's what we were looking at, and I was kinda disappointed. I was like, "Come on, at least make the guy look 21," but
Right.
turns out he was about 21.
Right, well, 21-year-old Corey, gets locked in the attic by Jeremy, and just as Jeremy's parents are coming home, Corey kicks the door open, as he's threatening Jeremy's life, and knocks Jeremy over a staircase railing to his death. Corey is accused of intentionally killing Jeremy, but is cleared of manslaughter. So
So, what did you think about how this movie pretty much started?
normally these slasher films open with somebody getting killed, and it did, but this was brutal, man. This was I gotta say, this was probably the most shocking death, I guess, that I've seen probably since, like, Hereditary, which I don't know if you've seen that, but anybody that's seen that film will agree with, this is probably up there with it, like, as far as, like, not really, being prepared for it, so, yeah, man, I was in for the first scene of this movie, I have to say. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it took it I was definitely taken back. I'm like, because like you said, it's a slasher film, so you're thinking, "All right, there might be an early kill by Michael Myers."
Uh-huh.
So not only was it not Michael Myers, but it was like a kid, and it was kinda, more or less accidental, and it was just
Mhm.
totally unexpected.
Yeah.
Just the kid's body's just laying right there in the middle of the hallway as the parents come in, and I'm like, "Wow." So it interestingly, like, drew me in. So I'm like, "Wow, where's this going?"
Yeah, dude, I was invested in this first scene for sure, man. It was a good opening scene for a horror film, 100%. I loved it. So then after the opening credits with the blue font, we get 3 years later in the town of Haddonfield, Illinois. They're still reeling from the aftermath of Michael Myers' latest killing spree, which happened in 2018, which was, a year before Jeremy's death. Michael's since vanished. Laurie Strode is writing a book, her memoir, having bought a new house, and she's living with Allison, her granddaughter, who's now a nurse. Meanwhile, Corey is working at his stepfather's salvage yard, and he gets a nice little motorcycle there, which was a nice little scene. His stepdad seemed like he actually cared about him, which was not something you usually see, like with
Yeah,
step
especially
parents.
especially not in a horror flick. It's usually
Right,
the other extreme.
right.
So we see this one pretty much taking place 4 years where Halloween Kills, ends.
Mhm.
Uh, I was definitely surprised by that. I guess I went into it thinking, because Halloween Kills picks up right after Halloween. So of
Yeah,
course, I guess I envisioned Halloween ends, Michael's best almost repeating Halloween 2. He's on his way to the hospital
yeah.
to take care of Lori. So, we talked about the opening scene with, the babysitter and the kid. So that kind of drew me back. And I'm like, I kind of like that they didn't follow what was expected.
Right.
And we kind of, we go forward 4 years and he's just, been, I guess, in hiding this whole time. But I don't know about you, but I was definitely expecting it just to kind of pick up right where the last one left off.
Yeah, I mean, it's kinda cool. So, how do you think Michael survived? Do you think he was, like eating rats, or do you think he was eating dogs like in the first one? You know how he supposedly ate a dog? Do you think he's, like, pulling dogs in the sewer and eating them, or do you think that that homeless man was maybe giving him, like, some of his, beanie weenies?
It's funny, I actually didn't even think about that. I guess it's just Michael Myers, he just doesn't die, but yeah, maybe the homeless guy was hooking him up with some food or, maybe he was eating animals or maybe he was eating people because didn't the homeless guy say he drug other people in there?
I mean, true, yeah, he could have been eating people for sure. So, on his way home one day, Corey is taunted by some high school bullies and injures himself, cutting his hand on some glass in the process. Lori sees this and takes him to the doctor's office where her granddaughter Allison works. Allison and Corey develop a relationship, and Allison invites Corey to a Halloween party, and they go there and they start having fun. Corey finally loosens up and he goes to the bar to order some drinks. And who is there? Who is there?
Jer Jeremy's mama.
Yeah, and she is probably the only person there not having fun. And of course, she sees Corey having fun and she's not very happy about that. So she gets in a worse mood and starts, yelling and screaming. And Corey decides to leave, and Allison chases him out. Corey basically tells her, like, hey, you're not going to do this. You're not going to fix me. I'm broken. You know, leave me alone. Leaves, gets confronted by the bullies again. The bullies, which what a weird group of bullies, man.
I'm
The
glad you
the
mentioned that. I'm
the
glad you
movies
mentioned that.
the m and okay, so there was, these 3 people that are mean as hell, and then there's this one girl that's always telling them no, and I'm just like, "Why is this one girl even hanging out with these other 3?" Like, I don't understand, like, w these other
Well
3 are obviously, like,
I
pricks.
mean,
Why are
you always have the one that's a little sympathetic,
Yeah, but she just seemed more sympathetic, like, she wouldn't go along with it. Like, I can see the one that's always like, "Hey, we're taking it too far." But it was just like, as soon as they start heckling, she's like, "Hey, guys, let's not do this." And it's just like, why are y'all even like, it seems like this is their MO. Like, why are you even hanging out with these people that you don't even like it at all, Like
I guess for me, I was trying to picture when they're first pitching this part of the story idea, and it's like, yeah, nothing new with bullies. You see them, and to me, it's almost overdone.
Uh-huh.
Um, but then it's like, but wait, it's going to be high school band
Mhm.
students. That's
Yeah.
new,
Yeah.
not football players. Not the macho guys.
But
Just
see, I would
no
much
one
rather.
would suspect band players.
Right, and I mean, I would actually like if they were all band members, that would actually be more interesting to me. But it's always like, "Hey, let's make it like one jock, one band nerd, one artistic one, and then one that looks like they're from the wrong side of the track and maybe has like a dangly earring and half of a shaved head." And it's just like, "What what are we doing?" Like these people would never actually hang out like that. Um, but, I don't know. I guess they're just trying to be diverse, but it's funny. It's always cracking me up. Some of these bully groups that they have in people. It's just never been my experience as a human that's actually lived in the real world to have a bully group that's just that's just always, and especially to just have one that's like, "Hey, let's not bully." It's just like, what is going on here? One of the silly things about this movie. So the bully group, they take it a little too far. They wind up throwing Corey over the bridge. Corey looks like he's dead. The teens, they flee. Michael Myers gets, or Michael Myers drags Corey's body into a sewer pipe, which is overseen by the homeless guy that we were talking about earlier. Corey wakes up. He runs into Michael Myers in the sewer. Michael lets him live. He takes off and gets out of the sewer. The homeless man starts to freak him out, and Corey stabs him, kills him, and takes off running and goes home where his overbearing mother is freaking out on him like she always is. And I mean, honestly, like I think his mom's relationship him and his mom's relationship might have been the scariest part of this movie.
Yeah.
Uh, it really reminded me of Psycho, like that whole vibe. Their relationship gave me real, uh, Bateman, I can't think of his first name. Bates.
Oh, Norman?
Norman Bates, yeah, real Norman Bates vibes. Real Norman Bates vibes for sure between him and his mom. So Corey and Allison go on a dinner date, but Allison's ex-boyfriend, police officer Doug Mullaney, shows up and starts to hit on Allison and just pretty much just pretending like Corey's not even there until Corey says something and them two kind of get into it. And then finally, Doug leaves them alone and to go off
I
and
mean,
later.
how rude. What was it he said to her when he realized she was with him? And I'm like, "Oh my god." I mean, I can't remember
Yeah.
now what it was, but it was I mean, I know he's supposed to be rude, but, like, you like this girl,
Well, yeah,
and
he's I think he's supposed to be that, that asshole type boyfriend anyways, and I mean,
he
he plays it well, for sure.
I mean, I'm like, that was, like, low what he said to her. I'm like, "Oh my gosh." I mean, dude, seriously.
Yeah, I mean, those are the ones that'll always say the most messed up stuff just to keep you, like, on there, like, keep you thinking about how keep you thinking about them no matter, like, if it's messed up or not, at least you're thinking about them. It's just, like, ugh, the worst kind of sociopaths. Not that I've dated any. Uh, but yeah, male and female, they're out there. So, later on, Corey kind of lures the dude into the sewer and pretty much lets Michael have at him. And, Corey is thrilled with this. He's pretty much just like, teach me, teach me. And Michael kind of, I guess, takes him under his wing, question mark. Super weird relationship there. Allison, she doesn't get the promotion that she's been wanting. It goes over to this other nurse who's extremely unqualified, but of course she flirting with a doctor, so she's gonna get the promotion. The same old, same old. Corey, he decides that he's not gonna be okay with this, so he goes and he kills the doctor as he's getting ready to sleep with said nurse, and the nurse discovers the dead body, sees Corey, and she gets locked inside the house. She's running away. Corey can't get inside. She's got a phone. She's calling 911. She's safe. Just kidding. Who comes around the corner but Michael, who's in the house? He's done this before. It's not his first time. He knows what's going on. He was ready for this. He takes her out. So, Allison, unknowing all of this going on, she agrees with Corey to like, let's leave Haddonfield. But, because of their past trauma, got Lori, she's starting to get super suspicious of Corey. She's seeing, some things that are familiar to her. She's not liking them one bit. Lori, she finds Corey sleeping in the spot where Jeremy died. She offers, to help him, but he's got to promise that, he'll leave Allison alone. Corey retorts. He says, he starts, Corey just starts blaming her for all of the events that have happened since 1978, and says that if he can't have Allison, no one will. So finally on Halloween, Corey returns to the sewer and successfully fights Michael for his mask and gets that back. Lori and Allison are arguing as Allison's getting ready to leave, and Allison starts blaming Lori for Michael's actions. That night, Corey gets ready to, go on a murdering rampage. He kills the bullies. He, accidentally kills his stepfather, and then he goes to kill his mom. And let's see, he kills his mom. He kills the DJ. Pretty much everybody that was just being like shit to him this whole movie. He took out, except for the stepfather was the only one, I guess, that was good to him, and I guess that was an accident.
Do you think he would have killed him, or you think he would have been
I think
off
he was
limits?
I think he would have been off limits.
Okay.
Um, I don't think he I don't think he's like Michael. Michael just kinda kills everybody without hesitation for the most part, and I don't think Corey was the same way. I think he was more vengeful.
Yeah, I mean, his targets definitely seem more from revenge aspect.
Yeah, whereas Michael's was just more of, like, hunting, I guess, and anybody that got in the way of his prey was just fair game.
Yeah,
So back at the Strode house, Lori is seemingly preparing to kill herself. She's doing this just to get, Corey close to her. She starts to shoot him, or she shoots him. No, he goes down the stairs. Corey, her and Corey get into it, and then Corey stabs himself and pretty much frames Lori for the murder in the process because Allison's just coming in the door as all of this is going on. And, she is freaking out. Michael arrives and Corey grabs his leg because he's not dead yet. Corey grabs his leg and tries to stop him because I guess he's afraid maybe that I guess it doesn't really say, but I'm guessing that he's afraid that he's gonna go after Allison. So he grabs his leg and tries to, I guess, stop Michael, and Michael kills him, finishes him off there on the spot. Then Lori starts fighting Michael, and they go back and forth and super intense. She finally starts to pin him to the table with some knives through his hands, gets him there, throws a fridge on top of him. Seems like she has him. She gets close to him, takes off his mask, and just talking shit. Michael just brutally rips his hand through the knife and grabs Lori by the throat. Lori seems like she's about to give up and die when Allison comes in and snaps Michael's arm, saving Lori. They decide to finish off Michael by slicing his wrist and letting him bleed out. They
because
decide,
he's dead, but he's not dead enough.
oh, and he's definitely not dead enough. So they round up the entire city. They all go to the salvage yard and they, in a ceremonious occasion, toss Michael into the grinder. What is that thing? I guess it's just like an industrial shredder type thing.
Yeah.
Michael is squished like a jelly bean, I guess. A jelly bean? I don't know why it's a jelly bean. Um, he's squished and goes into the industrial grinder. Everybody goes home. Alice or Lori finishes her memoir, and her and Allison start to reconcile. They pretend like nothing, they never were gonna kill each other or anything like that. She, I guess, has a romance with the deputy, and the end. So, Jeff, what'd you think about this one, man?
All right, so I'll give a little few Easter eggs first.
Alright, yeah, give us some Easter eggs.
So I picked up on some of these, while watching it, and some I was like, when I read it, I was like, okay, yeah, that does make sense. But so there was definitely some like throwback to the original.
Mhm.
Uh, so when Michael's inside the doctor's house, and he kills the nurse, very similar to the original, where he impales one of the victims to a wall,
Yeah, I
and then
did
just
notice
kind of
that.
stares at him. Then you also got Corey kind of recreating the iconic image of Michael looking down from a balcony while holding a knife.
Yeah.
We saw that early on. And then Lori later shooting Corey, very similar to the way Dr. Loomis shot Michael. And then a couple of really neat things. Of course, Corey babysitting Jeremy. Of course, the original Michael was all about the babysitter,
Yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis, and then her friend as well. But Corey and Jeremy are watching The Thing, which is a classic from John Carpenter.
Yep.
And in the original film in 78, Lindsay Wallace was watching 1951's The Thing from Another World, which is where John Carpenter did his The Thing as a remake of that film.
Yeah.
So a lot of little connect the dots
That's
there.
cool.
The original Michael Myers actor, Nick Castle, actually appeared during the costume party at the bar as the Flasher. the costume depicting the human guts
Oh,
and
cool.
that kind of stuff. So that was actually the guy that played the original Michael Myers.
The one that actually noticed that he was a scarecrow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course the one that I really liked was when Lori was looking down from her home and then she
Mhm.
sees Corey standing near the bush
Yeah, that was very
and
Halloween.
then he just kind of disappears and then just kind of appears from behind her.
Yep.
Because I really like that one because that's one of the main scenes I remember from the original Halloween was just him standing there, right next to the bush. And then the movie ends on a series of shots of empty rooms in Laurie's house, kind of similar to the way the 1978 film ended as well. So a lot of little like call them Easter eggs, just kind of little paying homage to the original and some of the other films in the franchise. So,
That was super cool. Yeah,
but
I did notice a few of those.
yeah, so I definitely didn't pick up on them watching The Thing, that being John Carpenter, and then the original they were watching the movie that John Carpenter did a remake of with The Thing. So there was a couple of them I
Yeah,
didn't pick
I
up
definitely
on.
didn't pick up on that one for sure.
So do we want to go straight into what we thought and give our ranking?
Yeah, we can go into, like, our
And
rankings and then well, first
th-
we can go into our yeah, we'll go into that, and then we can go into
our dude or
our dude of
dud.
the week, yeah.
All right, so
What
I,
do
I had
you
a I had a lot of mixed feelings about this one,
same.
positive and negative. So I like the idea that it didn't follow what I thought it was going to follow, where it picks up from where Halloween Kills ends, and Michael's just on his way to the hospital. And I don't know, I felt that's probably what they were going to do. I wasn't a huge fan of Halloween Kills. I thought the Halloween in 2018, I thought was a really good relaunch or kind of bringing it back to its roots. But Halloween Kills to me, I guess for those people, and I know like especially a lot of the younger generation, they're all about the kills, the uniqueness of the kills, and
Mhm.
so of course the second one, Halloween Kills, had a bunch of that. My gosh, that had to be the highest kill count in any of the Halloween movies.
Yeah.
Um, but I will say this as far as my positives about this is the story really drew me in. Starting with, the Corey and accidentally killing Jeremy, the little kid, right off the bat. They kind of go 3, 4 years down the road. And there was parts of me that really liked what they were doing with Corey's character. And I even kind of like a little bit of the tag team effort. I mean, that was a little different as far as Corey and Michael. Uh, so the story for sure kept me interested and engaged, no doubt. Could they have executed it a little better? Absolutely. We talked about the silliness with the bullies and just the way the relationship between Corey and what's the girl's name? I done forgot.
Allison.
Allison. Just the way that form didn't, I don't know, didn't seem natural or real. Although I mean I get it. I think she was attracted to him because she could relate to what he was going through, and I mean I guess that just that connection just attracted her to him. So there were a lot of things that I did like about it. So I read a lot of conflicting opinions, and I think I fall more on the positive side because I, I thought it was a decent ending with the way they kind of wrapped it all up. I mean, because obviously, for this to be the end or their version of the end of the franchise, it has to involve Michael dying. So we do get to see one last, pretty decent showdown between Michael and Lori, and kind of like you mentioned, the ceremonial. The community gets involved, and this is their way of finally getting rid of the evil, or I guess as Halloween Kills mention, evil must die tonight type deal. So I will give them props for not following the typical formula. They did a little bit different. I really appreciated that. I enjoyed the story. To me, it was kind of weird. Maybe you'll agree. The whole thing with Corey being involved in the killings, almost like a little tag team effort. That seems a little bit of a strange storyline to put in the movie that's supposed to be ending it all.
Yeah.
That's kind of, we've seen this in other franchises. You kind of make that move when you're trying to pass the torch,
Yeah.
sort of. But again, I appreciate the fact that they were trying to do something different, different story. Again, and to me, sometimes as long as you have me interested and engaged,
Mhm.
sometimes to me that's more important than maybe the scares. Because we would probably both agree this wasn't really extremely scary. It was all about the story for sure. So, having said all that, I'm still gonna give it a solid 3.5.
Alright,
Um,
so we're gonna do this brains. We're gonna say becau with I'll say brains because it's my week to pick, and I feel like brains, not only not for the reason that you're thinking, not and that's not a morbid reason, but because
okay.
he was a scarecrow, and Wizard of Oz, he was looking for a
Ah,
brain.
there you go, going deep. So yeah, out of 5 brains, I'll give it a good solid 3.5. Thought it was a decent fitting end. And like I said, while a number of things I think they could have did better, I appreciate the uniqueness. And again, to me, half the battle is keeping me interested and engaged, and I was drawn in right off the bat. So I had no problems finishing off the movie. There's tons of stuff I'll watch where I'm just like, I just can't wait for it to be over. I
Mhm.
mean, usually I don't it has to be really bad for me to just flat out give up on a movie before finishing it, but there's plenty of them I've watched where I'm just like, "Man, please get this over with," but I enjoyed it, so I wasn't, like, rushing it to be over. There were some neat little kills in there, especially with the DJ and cutting his tongue off and it being on the the turntable and
Yeah,
skipping and because even when Allison pulled up and she was listening to that radio station,
that was
you
pretty cool.
you heard the skips on it, because of his tongue. So yeah, I'm interested to see, what you think and how different or similar we might be on this one.
Okay, I think we're similar, but there's definitely things that I think probably bothered me a little bit more than they probably bothered you. The opening scene was great. That was a stroke of genius writing that I think they did well. I think it was probably the best piece of writing that they did. The rest of the movie, I'm gonna have to say that this is probably the biggest letdown that I've had all month for sure. Probably the biggest letdown that since we started this podcast, out of anything that's happened on this podcast was watching this movie. I did not like the Corey storyline at all, and I think it ruined the Allison storyline, and honestly, like you said, with it being the end of not just, like, this new trilogy, but basically what is considered, trying to be, like, the end of a franchise is so why would they basically focus on this new guy, you know? Okay,
Yeah, like, maybe Corey should have been introduced earlier,
okay, yeah,
not
like, it
not at
maybe
not towards the end, because there's not enough time, you
y
know?
yeah, and so okay, so hear me out, this is how Halloween Ends could have been actually, okay, so with all that, and there was just things that bothered me, like, the Corey I did not like the Corey and Michael Myers teaming up, like, there was a scene where you see Michael Myers and Corey, like, doing something, and then it cuts to, like, Corey riding on his motorcycle with somebody, like, holding on to him, and it's Allison, but at first you don't see that it's Allison, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, if this is Michael riding on the motorcycle, this is gonna be the greatest movie ever," but they weren't brave enough to go there, so
That
I'm gonna have to get knock them for it, knock them for the relationship.
that will be the Wayans brothers, remake
I
for
I
sure.
would have loved that. I would have been that would have changed my whole opinion on their relationship 100%. I'd have been like, "So that's how he gets everywhere so fast. He rides motorcycles. That explains the mechanic uniform and everything." So, I didn't like their relationship. I didn't like the love story part of it. Love stories can happen in horror movies, and that doesn't bother me. I don't think I'm not one of those people that's like, "Oh, a love story can't be in a horror film, like, they don't mesh," but it can be done well. This just was not the occasion of that it happening. With that being said, I'm gonna give it 2 brains because I did like the Laurie storyline of it. I like the beginning of the film. I like the way they ended it. I like the way, they killed Michael. I like the fight. I like the way it ended. I like the way, her bloodline helped finish it. with Allison helping and killing her and their whole storyline kind of ending, but here's how I make it a 4-star or better movie. Okay, hear me out, and I'm gonna fix everything that I think that you and I both have wrong with this, and maybe everybody else has wrong with it, okay? You can keep Corey, keep the opening, but instead of Corey actually becoming a killer, have Allison fall in love with him, have Lori start to turn on him a little bit, not have him actually kill anybody, get killed by the teenagers, but the Michael finds the mask and starts wearing the mask, and everybody saw Corey, and so everybody's
Mhm.
suspecting Corey this whole time, but Allison and Lori Allison's the only one that knows that it's not Corey, but even Lori is suspecting it until she actually confronted by Michael at the end and takes the mask off and sees that it's actually Michael, and then they can have their coming together at the end. We don't have to focus on Corey and Allison this whole time. It can be focused on Allison and Lori and their troubles that they're having the whole time and whether or not they can trust each other and who believes who and who's right. We can focus on that more. We can even focus on Lori's little triangle or love life that she's having, who's actually like an important character to the series. Like we get that in like small little increments, and she's the main character of the franchise. And so I think that could have been a way to kind of keep everything, but just a small, well, I guess it's not a small tweak. It would have changed pretty much the rest of the movie, but definitely for the better, in my opinion. That's how I would have fixed this movie.
I could definitely get on board with that. So it kind of made me think of you were talking about, they're thinking it's Corey, but it's actually Michael, and you can't tell the difference because they're wearing a mask.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I had pointed this out in the previous week when I mentioned when I watched Halloween Kills, but one of the things I thought was just outrageous is remember when they were mistaking that other guy that escaped the hospital or whatnot
Yeah,
as being Michael Myers, and
yeah,
of course he jumps from the building, and they're looking at him. It's like, well, how can we be sure this isn't Michael? Michael always wears a mask, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, wait a second. He's wearing a mask, but Michael Myers is like 7 feet tall, and this guy's 5 feet tall. It's
right.
like, I mean, the mask doesn't matter. Their body styles are polar opposite.
Exactly.
So anyway, I just thought that was fun. But yeah, yeah, I can get on board with your storyline. But yeah, I struggled with this one. I definitely think out of the new trilogy, the Halloween 2018 was by far the best.
Mhm.
Um, I probably would have easily gave that one a 4. Didn't care much for Halloween Ends. But just like I said, to me, I place a lot of value on uniqueness or the storyline, just keeping me interested. And I guess I was just so happy they didn't just follow the same formula and picking up with Halloween Kills that I was probably a little bit more lenient with, the issues I did have with the film.
Yeah,
Um, and while I like them trying with the whole Corey thing, about kind of what you said, it seemed out of place to be
yeah.
the final movie. That's not a type of twist that you throw in there when you're trying to finish it up. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and like I said, I can deal with different and I can deal with unexpected, but when it's done like this, it's just like what was the point of that? It doesn't make sense. It's like they gave us stuff we didn't need, and it wasn't even good stuff. You know what I mean? So like it wasn't even, in my opinion, enjoyable. The first scene was great, and then everything in between that was pretty much just sea level material in my opinion, like, and
Yeah.
honestly, like if it wasn't for the strong opening, like that opening scene and the way that the whole town, came together at the end and throwing Michael into, basically just like put the whole town to rest. That was really enjoyable for me to see that and just be like, like that's a good way to like do it, like, it kinda gives Lori some closure, and that was really nice. to finally, like, see, like, not only has she, like, killed somebody, but, like, it's like, "Where's the head? It disappeared," and it's just like,
Yeah.
there's no, question about it, like, here he is, we all see him, he's right here, the police see him at the table, nobody's missing anything, like, it's unquestionable that he's got thrown into, like, an industrial grinder, and he's now nothing but, liquid at the bottom of that thing, so
So basically, you were all for the top and the bottom bun, but all the meat in the middle is just
yeah, the top and the bottom bun were, like, the best, like, brioche bun that I've ever tasted in my life, but everything in between that is, like, the tomatoes were getting old, the lettuce was brown, the meat was cold, it wasn't even good meat, like, it wasn't even seasoned right, like, and they definitely didn't cook it well. And the condiments all just tasted kind of off, like, they're maybe, like, 1 or 2 days past expiration date, and then for some reason, there was, like, a little bit of peanut butter on there, and
Like, where did that
it's
come
like it's
from?
like like, normally, I love peanut butter, but right here, like, no, no, thank you. Yeah, pretty much. So, yeah.
I think from here on out, we'll have to, use describe it a sandwich for all our for all our reviews.
I mean, if they're like this, then there's probably gonna be some turd sandwiches that are coming our way. But yes, 100% did not enjoy this one. I probably won't rewatch it out of all of these, it's definitely the lowest one on our list at a 2.75 average because I gave it a 2, you gave it a 3.5. 2.75, it puts it, like, I guess 2.5 would be our average score, so it puts it right at our average, so not bad, I guess. Could be better, but or it could be worse. In my opinion. But that's the great thing about this podcast. We're not always going to totally agree, and that's why we have an average score. Otherwise, we would just agree on a score, and that's no fun.
Yep.
But yeah, it was definitely disappointing, and I'm glad you actually liked it more than I thought you were going to like it because I was like, oh man, like we've done all this goodwill this whole month, like building up Jeff's like love for horror movies, and he's gonna go out on this piece of shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's not gonna like movies after this, like horror movies after this. So
Well, I mean,
I'm glad you at least gave it a 3.5.
literally from the time I finished watching, we coulda had 10 different conversations between that time and, like, the start of this podcast, and you probably would've got 10 different scores. That's
Yeah,
how I probably was as low as a 2 at times, but then it's like when I would go back, because I try to read all the different reviews, the positives, the negatives, just get everybody's perspective, and, when I would read some of the positives, I was like, "You know what? That is a lot of things I did like about it," and, it did draw me in from the beginning, and, I was okay staying on board for the ride, and but yeah, to me, the beginning and the way it ended, I thought was very strong, and luckily, even with all the flaws, the storyline was just enough to guide me from the I guess there was enough momentum
yeah,
between the beginning and ending that it kinda helped me push through, but yeah, about like you, it was a lot of potential there.
yeah. That's the
Uh,
thing. I think that's what I really think. Because especially with that opening scene, and maybe that opening scene just ultimately was a disservice to the film, because at that point, I'm like, "Oh, man, like, where are they going with this?" Like, "This is gonna be a wild ride, and I'm not gonna know what to expect," and they just kept doing things that made me think that something more interesting was gonna go on, and I even expected, because at that point, Corey hadn't killed anybody, when Corey had laid down his sweatshirt and his mask at the Halloween party, I thought that that was gonna be the opportunity for Michael to somehow come in as, dressed like Michael Myers, and nobody's gonna catch him because he's dressed like Michael Myers, and he's gonna grab the mask then, and that's when everything's gonna, he's gonna take over that mask, and kind of play that character because, like, maybe, like Michael's just kind of noticed him going about the town, and he's kind of noticed that he can take over that persona, and go around unnoticed more. And so that's kind of where I thought it was gonna go, and so I guess from that point, maybe just them setting that up for some reason, like, I don't even know why they would set that up that without going that direction, because they made it so noticeable that he set it down, and then he picks up the sweater purposely, but leaves the mask, and I'm like, "Okay," and I kept waiting for something like that to happen, and it never really did, and so that was I think I just maybe let myself down by by my imagination. My imagination's better than the film in this point, in this instance. So, yeah, I just the things that I did like about it, I mean, I'll give it credit. Like, I enjoyed Jamie Lee Curtis, like, that whole her whole storyline was fine, and that was the only storyline that I even enjoyed. I didn't enjoy Allison's storyline because, like, I just I don't buy any film where the girl I mean, like, I know it happens, but in this case, with Allison's character and all that she's been through, I just don't see her falling that hard and going against her grandmother after all they've been through with as little time as they've been together. Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Oh, absolutely, and I've always said any relationship like that, whether it's horror, romantic comedy,
mhm,
whatever, you've got to get me to buy into it.
yeah,
I don't want to come out thinking, "Oh, they're in love because that's what the script said they had to be."
right.
And I hate it when it feels like that.
Yeah,
I
and that's the
want
way this felt.
yeah, I wanna feel that connection. I wanna be convinced. Once you get me to buy in, then I'm along for the ride as far as, that love story. So yeah, I didn't yeah, to me, it came off a little strange why she was so into him. I guess they thought that the whole connection there where she could relate to him because,
Yeah, and then her
they
being a nurse and a caregiver.
I guess they thought that was gonna be enough, and to me, yeah, I can understand that giving her interest,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, throw her life away for this guy,
Yeah, I mean,
just
she's gotta be in her mid-20s, right? I mean, she's gotta be at
seemed
least
a
the
little
same
extreme.
she's gotta be at least the same general age as him, right? Correct?
Yeah.
Like, at least so, I mean, it's not like she's like, I could see this if this was, like, a teenage romance, like, if he was, like, maybe 14 when he accidentally killed a kid, and then now he's 18 and she's 17, you know? Like, I could see that playing out, but for somebody that's in their mid-20s,
A
like, I know
successful nurse, I
yeah,
mean
I know it happens. I know it happens. I know there's definitely even people older than I am that are in stupid relationships that are toxic and that are bad, but from what she's been through, I just don't see that character doing that, and especially defying her grandmother like that, you know what I'm saying? Like, that just didn't make sense to me as a character.
Yeah.
But love is a mini splendor thing. So, but yeah, that and then his whole character in general just kinda got on my nerves, and I didn't like him. I didn't like the whole mentor thing with Michael, that seemed like it wasn't Michael's character. Like,
Yeah,
Michael's never really had a friend before, why would he start now, you know? It's like,
yeah, it
um
was kinda hard to interpret exactly what was going on there,
yeah.
unless there's some deeper angle that we just totally didn't pick up on.
Right, well, Halloween ends, and it ends with this, and, since Halloween is ending, we're gonna do something a little special, just kinda like we did with Cobra Kai at the end of our run with that. We are
Well, did you wanna do a dude or dud?
Oh, yeah, 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 we are gonna do something not very special, we're gonna do something like we do every single week. We are gonna give our dude or dud of the week. Do you wanna go first this week? Well, you can go first this week. Who is your dude or dud of the week?
Alright. I doubt I've picked very many of these, but I'm gonna go with a dud, and for sure it's I don't know his name, the lead bully, the marching band guy
Yeah.
in high school, complete dud. I mean, it's just
Yeah, what a jerk.
everything about him. It wasn't believable. Like I said, he was a total jerk. I don't know. I think at this point I've seen too many stories I guess, focusing on bullying.
Mhm.
So it just set it up perfectly for me to just be like, "Come on." I
Right.
mean, I've had enough. This no. So yeah, he's totally my dud. What about you? Your dude or dud?
Uh,
I'll be shocked if it's a dude on this one.
yeah, there's no dudes this week. I'm gonna go with a dud of the week. My dud of the week is Jeremy. I don't wanna say that he deserved to die because, you know, he still had plenty of life to turn himself around, but what an obnoxious little kid. And I mean, I know kids can be obnoxious, but, he was definitely giving our boy Corey there a hard time at the beginning, and, any kid that locks somebody in a room like that and is just laughing about it even as they're beating on the door, that's pretty psychotic. I'm gonna say, like, if I was playing a prank on an adult, if they were banging on the door, I wouldn't be laughing about it. I would be terrified, and I would be letting them out as soon as possible because
Yeah.
I realized how furious they were. So that
Well,
definitely wouldn't
almost
be happening.
it seems like a switch went off in that kid because he started off like a pretty nice kid,
Mhm.
and then it's like at some point it's just like he switched and
Right. I don't know I don't know what it was, but that kid was a little turd, and he is definitely my dud, so it's fitting that this is the first episode we've actually had 2 duds on,
double duds, break
which
out the
is
milk duds.
it's for sure, milk duds would have definitely made this film better. Um, but yeah, so now we are gonna hop into something, ending our horror movie month of the month of October. We have our top 5, I guess you would say, killers that are, either leads or have been featured in horror films or horror franchises. Do you wanna go back and forth, or do you wanna give out just, like, go top 5 and go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, or
Yeah,
how do you wanna do this?
we'll go back and forth starting with 5, and
Alright,
so you want
alright.
me to go first or
Yeah, you go first. Give us your number 5. Who is your number
alright.
5?
I feel like I got a decent mixture, some classics and some newer stuff, but number 5, I'm going with the classic from the '80s, Jason.
Okay.
Just something about the simple sometimes just simplicity can be really scary. So I love the hockey mask look. I mean, I don't own a lot of masks, but I do own a hockey mask like Jason. Uh, just something about it. I grew up in the '80s, so yeah. Number 5 is Jason.
Alright. So my number 5 is also from a similar era, but just I think a little bit later. My man Freddy Krueger.
Okay, yeah.
Uh, he definitely, I guess, probably pioneered horror comedy, which I've always found, super like one of my favorite, I guess, side side or subgenres of horror is like a horror comedy. Like I always enjoy, you know, comedy with a horror element or horror with a comedy element. It's definitely like up there. And Freddy didn't start out that way. He kind of went in that way, with his one-liners and, like, "Welcome to hell, bitch," like that type of Freddy, that we've kind of come to like know. But not just that, he just the fact that he can come into your dreams, like that's terrifying. That's absolutely just the thought of that is a terrifying concept. And the fact that he's, not even going after the people that wronged him, but the people's kids, that's just so evil and twisted. And for that, he is my number 5. Uh,
Solid choice, and that actually reminds me that, of course, I've probably mentioned before, like, my wife absolutely hates anything dealing with scary. She hates scary movies.
mhm.
She doesn't like Halloween. She doesn't like to be scared or pranks, whatever. And used to earlier in our marriage, I would I could just start by going 1, 2, and I was
Yeah.
Jeffrey. So but after years of learning how good her right hook is, I kind of quit doing that. But yeah, sometimes I would just break that out, or I might even do like the noise from Signs. You know that
Oh, yeah.
it probably won't come through on the podcast good. Plus, my mouth's really dry. But
Yeah.
so yeah. So anyway, I'll jump into my number four. Um, Number four, another classic. I'm gonna go from the '70s. Actually, I'm gonna go with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Alright.
Uh, I just found that really
Leatherface.
just again the simple mask.
Mhm.
Of course, this dude's wielding a chainsaw, so a little bit, but yeah, I loved it. Spooky, scary, freaky, all of it.
I don't know if
Um,
his mask would be considered simple. I mean, it was made from human flesh. That's
well, I
pretty
mean,
intense, and we don't even know if it's made from the same person, so, I mean, that's some and I mean, he sews it together. That's pretty complex, I have to say.
so maybe the wrong term of use of simple there, but so what about your number four?
My number 4 is going to be one that is kind of probably, like, I guess you would consider, like, an outlier from the rest. It's gonna be Sadako Yamamura or Samara in the United States remake, and that is probably, I guess, in layman's terms, would be the girl from the Ring franchise. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ring or Ringu, the original
I
film, but
I'm pretty sure I saw The Ring, and I don't think I cared a lot for it, so
yeah, so
I
but,
didn't see
like
any other things in the franchise.
but, I mean, that came out whenever I was younger, and I'm a big into slasher films, but I think this one probably changed what I thought of as far as, like, supernatural stuff being scary. This one changed the game, for me because this one made ghosts terrifying and made it my number 1 thing that I was probably scared of at that moment. Like, I was never terrified of slashers or even as, scared of the thought of Freddy being, like, I was never terrified of, my nightmares or anything like that, like, or Freddy killing me or anything. I probably had bad dreams here and there, but it was never like I never had night terrors, thank God, but with her, it was just and she was everywhere for so long, and even now, just if you see a girl with, like, a long white dress and, like, long black hair covering her face, that's everyone knows who that is, and I think us as, like, a culture, we haven't had very many things that have came out that us as, like, I guess even probably the whole world, can recognize as a horror icon, and everybody instantly recognize it, and even if you're not familiar with the film, you would know that character, even though you don't know her name, she's been pretty important to horror the past, 20 years or so. So yes, that's my number 4.
All right, well, my number three probably doesn't completely fit the mold because this one wasn't like the main featured like villain or scary character or whatnot, but probably because we watched this recently and I loved it so much. But Harold the Scarecrow,
Alright.
again, he was just one of what, 3 or 4 or 5.
Uh-huh.
So, I had like, short 5-10 minutes of fame there. But again, because I love the movie and to me, he was my favorite scary character in the movie. And just man, the kind that I don't usually get bad dreams from watching these kind of movies, but he's probably one that I could, if he'd probably be a prime suspect to start that with me.
That's
But
awesome.
yeah, so I'm going with Harold. What's your number
Alright.
3?
My number 3 is Jigsaw from the
Ah,
Saw
okay.
films. This is another one that changed the game for me. Y Just the thought of I mean, even though I'm not really big into body horror, just the thought of, having these people in their traps and him not necessarily killing them, but giving them, quote, unquote, "a chance to live," and the first time I watched Saw, I was in the theater. I didn't know about the twist. I just heard that it was a good movie and that, it's really scary and creepy and it's not like anything anybody'd ever seen. And I'm in high school and me and some friends, we go and watch it. We had to drive like to an extra like 30 minutes to another city because the ones weren't showing it. So, I mean, like this list is very personal to me, obviously, and I feel like, obviously yours is very personal to you, but this one, so much of like, and the Saw films continue to be good, in my opinion. There was definitely some films that weren't as good, but the twists, they always, were pretty well written most of the time. They always had a really good way of like bringing back characters, involving, interweaving storylines, interweaving films. I always enjoyed it, and like I said, it was one of those that came out at the perfect time in my life that I've just been able to stay in touch with because it's just always kept my interest, and even though it's not something I typically go for because I typically, even some of the stuff that happens in the Saw films, like, I'm just like, "Oh," and I can barely watch them because they're just too much for me, and I'm just like, I can't watch some things, like stuff involving, like, teeth or eyeballs or fingernails or things like that. They're just, too much for me, but I do love the Saw films and the storylines, and even the traps are just super inventive most of the time, so that is my number 3. What's your number 2, my friends?
Yeah, we're definitely very similar on the whole Saw thing. I'm not real big into like gore or like you said, the body horror type stuff.
Mhm.
But I do remember watching like the original Saw, and I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I really really liked it. Like you said, just the interesting scenarios that were created, and it was so different that I kind of didn't mind all the kind of the gore that came with it, even if I had to turn my head for parts. But I don't know. For me, I don't know if just the gore eventually just got to me, but I tried Saw 2 and Saw 3, and I gave up at that point because I didn't enjoy those, and I don't know how many they made, but I know I quit trying after the 3rd one, but yeah, definitely the original, could easily be in my top 10 movies, as far as that genre.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm on number 2 now. I'm gonna go with Ghostface from Scream.
Okay.
So probably not considered for most people like the scariest of characters, but for me it was meaningful because product of the '80s. So of course Michael Myers, Jason, Freddy Krueger, and all them. Then for me personally, there was kind of a lull there where I don't remember really watching a lot of scary movies or really liking very many for maybe a 5-10 year period there. And then this movie came out, and oh man, I fell in love with it. But the character itself, I mean, he's still plenty scary. Just a very basic mask, obviously, but just I mean that mask is probably one of the most popular masks in the Halloween market still today.
Yeah.
So yeah, love the movie, love the character, just the mix of humor and horror there. And it's funny because when you were talking about how the opening scene of Halloween ends started off so strong, and it just kind of takes you back, kind of puts you in a shock factor, but then kind of quickly loses steam. I immediately thought of Scream because I'm like, that was a movie that shook you right off the bat with the shocking opening scene, but they didn't lose steam. I
Right.
mean, they
They did it
kept
right.
going and made an incredible film for start to finish, which is like we mentioned, I feel like Halloween Ends had that potential with the way it started, but then they weren't able to kind of continue the momentum. But so yeah, for me, it's Mr. Ghostface. Who's your number 2?
Alright, number 2, we definitely talked about this, and here's where the spoiler comes in. My number 2 is Mr. Charles Lee Ray himself, Chucky, the good guy doll. Man, this you can't get much more personal. This one is like I've said before, this was my introduction to horror films. This was the first horror film that I watched, for, I guess, adults. This was the one that I've seen like, I saw the first one, like, start to finish, my introduction. I've watched them my whole life. They've been making them my whole life. I've watched all of them. I've seen at least one of them every year that I've been alive. I love Chucky. I love Charles Lee Ray, the killer. He's just gone from serious to silly to very silly to scary again to the new series is great, and I've heard that they're coming out with a second season, so I'm super stoked about that. It's great, man. Brad Dourif does a great job voicing him. He it, yeah, man, it's great. I love how they've been able to keep, the same actor voicing him the whole time, so that's great. It's just in the same, uh Mancini, I think he's been involved with most of, if not all of the writing in every film. So it's been great that, basically the same team has been involved, even though it's gone from like different companies and different, film productions and stuff like that. It's still been the same core people involved with it in some aspect. So it's been pretty cool. So that is my number two. What's your number one, man? I'm ready to hear it. Let's hear it.
All right, probably no surprise, but like very much you mentioned how, Chucky just had such a personal connection with you. My number one is similar, but it is Michael Myers. I
Okay.
don't know if it was the very first horror flick I saw, but it's definitely the first one I remember, and the first one I remember really, uh, like just really being drawn to. Because you had plenty of Jason fans, plenty of Freddy fans, but I don't know what it was about Michael Myers, but man, I enjoyed that original movie and even the second one so much, and just his character. I don't know if it's because to me, the most scary things are the ones that can be the most realistic. And obviously, if you look at all the Halloween sequels and stuff, yeah, I mean, he survives way more than he should have. But when you look at the original movie, and it's basically just messed up kid turns into a stalker, and I don't know, it just seems so real and so possible in a lot of ways that to me that tends to be more scary than like maybe a Freddy Krueger or even a Jason to an extent. Wasn't near as realistic to me, but yeah, it's definitely Michael Myers, no doubt for me.
Well, Jeff, I have a surprise for you. I didn't share this with you, but I had a feeling that when you told me about this list that he was gonna be your number 1 or at least be on your list somewhere. So I have a special guest here. Why don't you come on in? All right, here he is, everybody, the shape himself, Mr. Michael Myers. Michael, how do you feel about, your latest installment? Okay. That's I kind of feel you. I feel you. I think it could have went that direction too, but it's here. It seems like it's doing well financially. So I mean, that's got to be making you quite a bit of money, huh? All right. Um, so I know you're busy. Halloween's coming up, so I'm not going to keep you too long. How do you feel about Jeff honoring you as his favorite? I agree. I agree. Well, man, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you so much for stopping by. It has been great. Jeff, do you want to say anything to Michael before he has to head out?
Oh my gosh, Michael, I'm your biggest fan. I love you. You're the greatest. I'm not sure how Parker reached into our budget to pull this off and bring you in. This is the best Halloween of my life. That was amazing.
Wow, man. That was I was honestly like that one took a lot of donations. That pretty much took all of our Patreon. Everything that we've made on Patreon so far we just spent it on that. So everybody that's donated, thank you. You made this
Uh,
happen, not
I
me.
almost feel guilty. I feel like I need to go find a weird My Buddy doll or something. It might look like might look like Chucky or something.
Well, okay, so I didn't wanna, like, upstage myself, and I probably did, but my number 1, is Ghostface, which is actually the only one, and I kind of had a feeling it would be the only one that we would have overlap on our list. It was the only one that I was 100% sure we would overlap. The rest, which, I mean, I'm surprised we didn't have any more overlaps,
Oh yeah.
but definitely knew Ghostface. And the reasons I love Ghostface, there's just so many. This is my slasher film. You know, we as when I was growing up, all of the slasher films that I was watching they had already been put out so many sequels, so you didn't even see the originals usually as the first ones. You'd already seen, like, the silly sequels with, of Halloween, of Jason, of even, Chucky. We didn't get the original introduction to these. So for me, I was 10 when Scream came out, so I was, where I was liking my slasher films and I was into 'em, so I was super stoked on this, and I saw the commercials. I didn't see it when it came out, so as soon as it came out on, VHS, I remember renting it, running home and watching it back when that was a thing, and I loved it, I loved the original. I didn't even get a lot of the smartness of it, I guess, the intelligence of it until I got older, and as I got older, I realized more and more, as I loved horror and fell in love with more and more horror and learned more about it, it just the films themselves got better and better, and the reason that Ghostface is my number 1 because not only is it my generation's, I guess, slasher, um, but Ghostface itself has always been so interesting to me because as a slasher, you never know who Ghostface is. Like, even though you notice the killer as a killer, you've always known, like, okay, well, Chucky is Chucky. Freddy Krueger's Freddy Krueger. Michael Myers is Michael Myers. But you never know. So it always has that extra element of uneasiness to the films because the boyfriend could be the killer, the mom could be the killer, the the next door neighbor could be the killer, you never know. It could be the security guard, it's one of those things where it's like it adds that extra element of like of mystery to the film that I've just
Mhm.
loved so much, and you can't do that without having a great killer such as Ghostface, and the voice, the quizzing them, being more than one killer, like, all of these things are just so iconic, and I love like, all the things that make Ghostface Killer my number 1 because
Yeah,
love it.
and Matthew Lillard's performance in Scream might be my favorite performance ever in any horror flick.
Oh, for sure,
I
especially,
mean,
like, at the end when I mean, like, just like, honestly, just the dynamic of those 2 characters, like, I don't know, I could go back and forth, and we could probably spend a whole podcast just talking about those 2 characters because what they represented, I guess, at the time and what eventually happened with in just society at that time is just a lot of weird things and just crazy. Um, but yeah,
and I
great.
don't know how long I watched Riverdale thinking, "Why does Jughead's dad look so familiar?" Until I realized he was in Scream. He was like the one of the main killers. I was
Yep.
like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe it took me that long to realize."
I know, I was so bummed when he left Riverdale, man. So
Yeah.
bummed. Um,
Well,
and honestly, that was
since
probably, like, when it went downhill for me.
yeah, for sure, but since the movie itself was such a bummer, especially for you, maybe we can lighten the mood a little bit. And we normally do this at the beginning. Of course, you're the editor, so you could probably put it back towards the beginning if you want. But our kind of off topic, off script We dug deep into the whole idea of cereal or milk first, and I felt like our friendship survived that one pretty well. But I got another question, and it's a pretty big one. It's pretty personal. It's one of those questions that everybody always wonders, but they rarely ask. And I think it's time that we tackle this one and and see if it just strengthens our bond and our friendship. But I'm sure all the listeners want to know. But is it boxers or briefs?
Boxer briefs.
Boxer briefs.
Yeah.
All right.
Yup. I mean, I can't do briefs. I can't do briefs at all. They're just too tight. They're too restrictive. But I like the security that boxer briefs give me.
All right. So you ready for mine?
Let's hear it.
Boxer briefs.
Alright. Well, there we
so,
go.
so I mean, for me, I started off in briefs, probably like most young boys, especially young boys in my generation. But then as I kind of hit the high school age, like boxers became really popular. Like you weren't cool unless you were wearing boxers.
Yep.
Of course, you were totally uncool or a nerd or whatever if you were still wearing briefs.
Especially the
So
whitey tighties.
oh yeah, for sure. But like you, I just found briefs uncomfortable. But then I didn't like boxers either because there was like zero support.
Mhm.
Um, and I can't remember if I just tried boxer briefs or I heard someone talk about them. And I went.
You saw Michael Jordan in them Hain commercials, don't lie.
Who knows? I don't remember. But now I will admit, when I first tried boxer briefs, I didn't like it because I wasn't used to it going down like to my thigh area.
Mhm.
That just felt weird at first. But yeah, after a while, I'm like, man, you get the supporter briefs and the comfort of boxers.
Yeah.
You put them together, and man, there's no going back after that.
I agree. I
So
agree 100%. If you're not wearing boxer briefs, you're doing it wrong.
exactly. Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Just
Get
quit
with
trying to
it.
be quit trying to be macho and do the whole boxer thing. It's just disgusting.
Although I could see, like, if I had, like, a pair of briefs that maybe had just, like, a more pouch in the front, it could probably be pretty comfortable, but yeah, I don't they're definitely too restrictive, especially for, like, my build, I guess. They just never fit right. So I have a
I
question.
okay.
When you were younger and you were wearing your briefs, did you have the ones with cartoon characters on them? Did you have the, like, He-Man underoos?
I feel sure I did, 'cause like every kid did back then. But then yeah, it eventually went to the straight whitey tighties. But then at some point, I remember getting a little bit more edgier, and I had colored briefs.
See, I was never that cool as a kid.
Yeah,
I went from, like, the Ninja Turtle underwear with, like, the red waistband and going from those to the, whitey tighties to boxers.
awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, I still have boxers now because, like, if I'm just, like, laying around my house, I will tend to wear those as, like, more of a comfort thing, but, like, if I'm working and I'm moving around or I'm being, like, athletic whatsoever, absolutely, 100% boxer briefs, uh, for reasons that you probably don't even have to imagine.
Well, since you're the editor, I mean, you can choose whether to leave this at the end, but maybe you should go back and put some clickbait at the beginning.
No, we gotta keep the juicy stuff for the end. Uh,
Keep it.
we'll keep this for the people. This is the juicy parts for the people that hang out this long.
Yeah, this
Uh,
can be our way of letting people know, hey, you're missing out if you're not listening to the end.
yeah, you're missing
Because
like two special, or well, I guess three special guests. You know, Michael
well,
Myers, and then our two packages.
yeah. And
Brief mentions.
it seems
Brief.
like you had mentioned the pouch thing, and I've either seen them advertised or maybe even Steph showed it to me. But there's some kind where it's like the front is the pouch is almost they like advertise it like as a hammock.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's supposed to.
I think I need those.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know, but yeah. Anyway,
I'll
so
report back on those.
it shouldn't be surprising that although we're different in many ways, we do have some vast similarities, and I guess our boxer briefs is another one of them.
Well, I'm glad that our disagreements ended underwear.
There you go. And if I find some He-Man boxer briefs, you'll be the first that comes to mind.
No, I want the original ones, like, if I want, like, full-grown men, like, briefs that are themed, uh, He-Man, these are acceptable. He-Man, Ninja Turtles, um, Power Rangers, you know, that kind of theme, all accepted. Um, Nothing current children. It has to be something from the '80s or '90s.
Right.
Otherwise, they ain't getting put on this guy.
Well,
Um,
for me, it would have to either be the Minions, uh, Toy Story, or maybe The Lion King. So there's
alright,
my. So hey, if any of our listeners want to send us Christmas gifts, there you got some ideas for some.
alright. Well, that concludes our horror movie month this month. It's been great. Next month, our theme well, I guess before we close out this month, let me ask Jeff. Jeff, to conclude our, I guess, goal for the month, our side mission, if you will, um, was trying to get you to love horror movies again, and have we at least pushed you in that direction?
I would say in its own little way, it has been somewhat successful. You know, I definitely had hit a stretch to where I don't know. I had enough disappointments, I guess,
Mhm.
since like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer or Signs, um, that I wasn't even giving anything in that genre really even a glance or even much thought. I mean, it would have had to have been something like a new Halloween to even draw me in just because of my love for the originals. But like, especially seeing a couple of these, I was like, you know what? I think there's still something in me that can enjoy these movies. So I'll definitely be more inclined to give those that genre a harder look when I'm choosing what to watch.
Alright. Well, dude, I'm glad because, I mean, it's like I said, it's one of my favorite genres, so, you know, anytime I can get one of my friends, you know, especially, like, one that's already not only, like, been in love with it before, but fallen out of it in love again, like, that just breaks my heart, so the fact that I can get you, like, going in that direction again just fills my heart with nothing but, I guess, other people's blood. Because, yeah, it fits the theme. So now that we have successfully completed this mission, we can move on to our next, theme for next month, and we're gonna kinda do something a little bit more interesting. We're gonna make it November our 2 Dudes Month, and that's basically any film that, covers 2 dudes being the main character and it focusing on their friendship, sexism be damned. It could be any kind of friendship. It does not necessarily have to even be two humans. Um, so we went to our Facebook group where we polled all of our members, and the winner for the view or for the listener's choice this month is the Boondock Saints, which was picked by Charlie Horton, and it got the most votes. So that's the one we will be watching. You can find that on Amazon Prime. I'm familiar with this movie. This came out whenever I was in high school, but I don't think I watched it till I was college. This is definitely nothing but a college movie, which is hilarious because that's where I know the guy who recommended this from. So it's kind of I'm sure Charlie and I watched this movie together during the time frame that it ca that I'm familiar with this film. I probably haven't watched it in a good 15 years. So it's gonna be really interesting to go back and watch this one again because I've heard that a lot of people haven't really been too keen on it, upon rewatching it the past couple of years. So it'll be really interesting to go back and watch it again and see how much I enjoy it as a full grown male that's not, drunk and high on a couch that somebody picked up off of the side of the road. Um, we'll see how much I like it now, but I don't think you've seen this one at all, have you?
I have not at all. Like I said, I don't even I know I've heard of it, but I
Mhm.
know nothing about it. So,
Alright.
does that make next month Brovember?
I guess well, I don't wanna call it Brovember, we'll call it Dudevember. We'll call it Dudevember. That feels more fitting because bro, I feel like can leave out some other sexes that I don't want to necessarily pigeonhole dudes into being necessarily males, because I very much call all of my female friends dudes, so I don't want anybody to think that this is strictly male driven, even though you and I are both males and that's our perspective on the world. I definitely don't want anybody to feel excluded from the conversation. So,
Well, in all fairness, I refer to my wife and other women in my life as bro.
uh,
like,
fair. I mean, there you go. I guess
like,
bro is just a new dude or a
bro, you mad? Or so I use that all the time towards women.
Okay, well, there you go. So yeah, so next week we will be watching The Boondock Saints. If you wanna join us for that, that would be great, and I'm excited to watch it again, Jeff. It's been great this week. I had fun this week with you, my friend. Thank you so much for doing this with me, and thank you for this month. It's been a blast. I've had so much fun watching these.
Yeah, it's definitely been a good change of pace from doing Cobra Kai for several weeks, and so it was fun doing Screaming with two dudes for an entire month. So yeah, we close this chapter. I'm ready for the next one, and look forward to what all that brings.
All right, man. Well, thanks everybody, and I guess we'll catch you next week.
And happy Halloween!
Happy Halloween! Thank you so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars and a review, no matter what it says, really do help these dudes out on the charts. If you have a thought or idea about what we're watching, please email us at streamingwith2dudes@gmail.com or request to join the Streaming with Two Dudes Facebook group. Links to our Patreon and our socials are in the show notes. Thanks again, and remember, don't introduce your granddaughter to anybody that's ever killed a child.